Are you as tired as I am of scrolling through top fantasy series lists that mention the same 3 shows over and over again? Game of Thrones, The Witcher, Lord of the Rings. Alright, we get it, they're awesome. But what about the hidden gems? The incredible stories that somehow flew under the radar? Well, today we're fixing that. I'm counting down 10 phenomenal and seriously underrated fantasy series that nobody seems to talk about anymore. These are the shows with epic world building, characters you'll actually care about, and twists that will leave you floored. If you're hunting for your next fantasy obsession, you came to the right place. Let's jump in. Kicking off our list is The Outpost, an underrated fantasy adventure series that aired for 4 seasons on the CW between 2018 and 2021. The story centers on Talon, the last surviving member of a race known as the Blackbloods. After mercenaries slaughter her entire village, she sets her sights on a remote, lawless fortress at the edge of civilization, driven by vengeance and nothing else. What makes The Outpost a true hidden gem is that it prioritizes heart and character over a massive budget. Sure, some critics dismissed it for its B-movie production quality, but the fans who stayed discovered a surprisingly addictive story that only gets better as it goes. If you're someone who enjoys character-driven fantasy like Xena Warrior Princess, this show is right up your alley. The Outpost never became a mainstream hit, but it quietly earned a loyal fanbase and absolutely deserves more recognition. Coming in at number 9 is A Discovery of Witches, a sleek, atmospheric fantasy drama that blends romance, history, and magic into one addictive package. Based on Deborah Harkness's All Souls trilogy, the series introduces a world where witches, vampires, and daemons quietly live among humans. At the center of it all is Diana Bishop, a brilliant Oxford historian who also happens to be a witch trying her best to avoid magic. But everything changes when she accidentally unlocks Ashmole 782, a long-lost enchanted manuscript rumored to contain the origins of every supernatural species. Suddenly, she becomes the most hunted person in the magical world, and the only one willing to help her is Matthew Claremont, a mysterious vampire with his own secrets. Despite centuries of rivalry between witches and vampires, the two form an uneasy alliance to protect the book, and in the process, fall into a forbidden romance. A Discovery of Witches stands out for its mature tone, stunning European visuals, and slow-burning supernatural politics. If you're into fantasy that feels gothic, emotional, and beautifully shot, this one is absolutely worth your time. At number 8, we have Sweet Tooth, a uniquely heartfelt Netflix original that blends post-apocalyptic drama with fairy tale fantasy. The story takes place after the Great Crumble, a global disaster where a deadly virus wiped out most of humanity. At the same time, babies began being born as human-animal hybrids, and terrified survivors started blaming the hybrids for the outbreak. Our main character is Gus, a naive half-deer boy who has spent his entire childhood hidden away in a forest cabin. But after his father dies, Gus sets out on a dangerous journey to find his mother, joined by a tough, reluctant protector named Jeopard. What makes Sweet Tooth so special is how it balances a gentle storybook adventure with a harsh dystopian world. The bond between wide-eyed Gus and world-weary Jeopard is the heart of the series, delivering some genuinely powerful moments. Sweet Tooth is ultimately a story about hope, friendship, and what makes us human. Proof that fantasy can be both wildly imaginative and deeply moving. Number 7 is Locke Key, a supernatural fantasy series on Netflix that blends mystery, horror, and coming-of-age drama.
This is insane. There's a time travel key?
What's happening? He's here.
Based on the comics by Joe Hill and Gabriel Rodriguez, the story follows the Locke family, who move into their eerie ancestral home Key House after their father is murdered. Soon, the youngest son discovers that the house contains magical keys with incredible powers. One can take you anywhere, another can free your spirit from your body, and many more hide within the mansion. But the siblings quickly realize a sinister entity named Dodge is also hunting the keys, and will stop at nothing to claim them. Locke Key balances childhood wonder with genuine supernatural dread. Its mysteries and emotional themes of grief and trauma give it surprising depth, making the journey both magical and unsettling. The series concluded after 3 seasons. At number 6 is the Shannara Chronicles, a series that once looked like the next big fantasy epic but was unfortunately cut short.
Their destinies chose them, even before they were born.
Based on Terry Brooks' best-selling novels, this was MTV's bold attempt to create their own Game of Thrones. Set thousands of years in the future, it imagines a world where magic has returned and elves, trolls, and other ancient races have reappeared. The story kicks off when the El cries, an ancient magical tree that protects the world from a demon realm begins to die. With every leaf that falls, another demon is released. A mismatched trio consisting of an elven princess, a half-human, half-elf, and a clever rover embarks on a desperate quest to save the tree and stop the rising darkness. But after MTV shifted the show to Spike TV for its second season, viewership dropped sharply and the series was ultimately canceled. It was a real disappointment for fans because the show delivered rich world building, a fun cast, and surprisingly epic fantasy on a cable budget. The Shannara Chronicles remains one of the most ambitious and underrated fantasy adaptations of the past decade. Holding down the number 5 spot is Grimm, a series that blends a police procedural with dark, modern-day fairy
I
tales.
suggest you two go home and get a little sleep.
What about you?
No, I won't be done for a while.
The story follows Portland detective Nick Burkhardt, who discovers he's descended from a line of Grimms, guardians meant to keep the balance between humans and the hidden world of mythological creatures called Wezen. Nick's ability to see the Wezen in their true form pulls him into a maze of supernatural politics while he's solving everyday crimes. Episodes often start like normal cases until a supernatural twist changes everything. Over 6 seasons, the show builds an impressive mythology from ancient Grimm history to powerful Wezen clans. Grimm stands out for its creativity, mixing folklore with a gritty detective vibe. What begins as a simple Monster of the Week setup grows into a layered story with strong world building. If you enjoy urban fantasy with a darker edge, Grimm is definitely worth your time. At number 4 is The Magicians, a series often described as Harry Potter for adults, though that label barely scratches the surface.
Some goddamn magic! Stop it!
Based on Lev Grossman's novels, the show follows Quentin Coldwater, a grad student who discovers that magic is real and that he's been accepted into Breakbills, a secret university for magicians. But once inside, Quentin and his friends realize the truth. The magical world is far darker, stranger, and more dangerous than any story they grew up reading. The Magicians excels at twisting familiar fantasy tropes into something sharper and more grown-up, tackling themes like depression, trauma, and the heavy cost of power, all with a clever, cynical edge. The characters are deeply flawed, and that raw honesty makes their journey hit even harder. Although it had a slow start for some viewers, the series evolved into one of the most inventive and emotionally fearless fantasy shows on TV. It built a fiercely loyal fan base before wrapping up its 5-season run in 2020, and it remains criminally underrated in the conversation about great modern fantasy. At number 3, we step into the gaslit, fog-soaked streets of Victorian London with Penny Dreadful. This Showtime gothic horror masterpiece brings together some of literature's most iconic figures: Dr. Frankenstein, Dorian Gray, and characters tied to Dracula. At its center is Vanessa Ives, a deeply haunted woman who teams up with an American gunslinger and a hardened explorer to confront the supernatural terrors stalking the city's darkest corners. What makes Penny Dreadful truly special is its exquisite writing and intoxicating atmosphere. It doesn't just throw famous monsters together, it digs into their psychology, their trauma, and their humanity in ways that feel almost poetic. The production design is stunning, the storytelling is rich, and the performances, especially Eva Green's extraordinary turn as Vanessa, are unforgettable. This is a slow-burn horror series that builds a thick sense of dread instead of relying on cheap scares. Although critically acclaimed, it never quite reached mainstream popularity and ended after 3 seasons. Still, Penny Dreadful remains a beautiful, tragic, and terrifying love letter to gothic fiction. Our runner-up is His Dark Materials, the spectacular HBO and BBC adaptation of Philip Pullman's legendary trilogy.
Time has come. The child is with her mother. Bring them to me.
Dead or alive?
Set in an alternate world where every person's soul exists outside their body as an animal companion called a daemon. The story follows Lyra Balakwa, a brave young orphan who stumbles into a sinister conspiracy involving kidnapped children and a mysterious cosmic particle known as dust. Her journey takes her across worlds, bringing her face to face with armored polar bears, powerful witches, and the oppressive magisterium, an institution determined to control all of humanity. His Dark Materials is a massive achievement in world building and far more faithful to the books than the 2007 film adaptation. With a phenomenal cast, breathtaking visuals, and a deep respect for its source material, His Dark Materials stands as prestige fantasy at its finest. Though well received, it often felt overshadowed by HBO's other fantasy giants. It deserves far more recognition and wrapped its story in 2022. And finally, at number 1, we have Carnival Row, a Prime Video series that created one of the most imaginative fantasy worlds in recent years.
No one can stand in the way of what is coming. They, all humans.
Set in a gritty neo-Victorian city, the show explores a society where humans coexist uneasily with refugee mythical creatures, fae, fauns, and others whose homelands were destroyed by war. At the heart of the story is the forbidden love between a human detective, Rycroft Philo Philostrate, and a fairy named Vignette Stonemoss. As Philo investigates a string of brutal murders threatening to tear the city apart, Vignette becomes embroiled in the struggles of the persecuted fae, who are treated as second-class citizens. What makes Carnival Row brilliant is how it uses fantasy to explore powerful themes like prejudice, classism, and displacement. The world building is stunning, from the grimy streets of the Burg to the intricate designs of the Fae races. Despite its ambition and beautiful execution, the show was cancelled after its second season, partly due to pandemic-related production delays. But even in its short run, Carnival Row delivered a gripping blend of fantasy noir mystery and sharp social commentary. For its originality and sheer craftsmanship, it earns our top spot as the most underrated fantasy series that people just don't talk about enough. And there you have it, 10 incredible fantasy series that flew under the radar but are absolutely worth your time. Whether you're into gothic horror, epic adventure, or deep emotional storytelling, there's a hidden gem here for every kind of fantasy fan. Have you watched any of these? Which one do you think is the most underrated? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm always looking for new recommendations. If you enjoyed this list, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.